Drumming is not for you. You're not a good drummer. Oh, look at that guy, he's got a BMW. That's a real drummer. Become a lawyer, become a doctor, get a real life. Why aren't you married yet? You're like 27. You're still practicing? You're like 30 years old. You'll never get a woman if you keep playing drums. That's not a career. It's like for fun. Being a musician, that's just a dream. Don't follow your passion. That's for broke people. Following your passion is all well and fine, but do you make any money? You don't have a house yet? Look at the car you drive. Come on, stop being a drummer. Hi friends, welcome to this video. I think this is a very important video because the things that you just heard are things that I've heard all my life. Believe it or not, one of the hardest things to overcome for me was that sentence, drumming is not for you. What the hell? I mean, what kind of a person would say that to someone who has an unending passion for something? We have to ask ourselves why these people are in our lives. Why do we permit this kind of behavior? Why do we tolerate this kind of behavior from people in our lives when we are trying so hard to make something happen? Now, since I was a kid, I had a burning desire to play. Okay, when I was about 2 years old, my parents were musicians, so they bought me a snare drum, right? A snare drum. And I would just put it on the floor and play forever, you know, just play, put on James Brown records and play. And it's instilled in you. It's like it's never going away, and it's there and you're like born with it. That's how drumming is. Drumming selects you. You don't select drumming. Okay, now, what kind of a person would say to somebody like that, hey man, you're driving this piece of crap car, or you know, any of the comments that you heard in the beginning, who would say something like that? Well, I'll tell you who would say. Your closest friends, your family, those around you that are in your immediate vicinity, and perhaps even those on the periphery of them, of your family, who talk about you behind your back. Convincing then your family that something is wrong here. What the heck is going on? You're like 27, you're like 30, 35, all your friends are married and they have houses, and you're still slugging it out, you know, trying to get a good paying gig or schlepping your stuff and driving from gig to gig, if you're lucky enough to have gigs, right? Many guys have part-time jobs and they play on the weekend with the hopes of getting a gig, a steady gig somehow, you know. Who would say those things? What kind of a person do you have to be to try to kill somebody's passion, dream? Okay, now, when I was a kid, also, I was in Miami at that time. I ran across in one of my classes, I'll never forget the second, third day of class, one of the little kids comes up to me and he says, hey man, are you a drummer? For some reason, he knew that I liked drums or whatever. I don't know how he found out. And I'm like, yeah. Well, you better look at that guy because he's a drummer, right? I'm like, who? You know, and I searched for this kid, and finally I run into him, right? And he's sitting at a table, I can't even remember his face. All I know he had kind of long hair, like the 70s kid haircut, you know. And he looks at me and he starts playing on the table, bippity poppity, bippity poppity, right? And I was like staring at him. And this was like a total challenge, all right? It was like a duel. It was so bizarre now that I think about it. But he's sitting there playing, and the other kids are like, yeah, man, he's a real drummer, right? I look at it. I look at it now and I have to laugh. I feel like that movie Drumline, you know, in some way. That was the most ridiculous movie I've ever seen. So ever since then, you know, there's this thing in the back of your mind, yo, this guy's a real drummer. You're not a real drummer. Drumming is not for you. You're not that talented, right? Those are all things that you're going to have to face. Imposter syndrome. You know, I faced that once in a while when there was perhaps a new style I was trying to learn, and I would get called to a gig when I wasn't ready, you know, and I'd go to the gig and I'd do the basics, try to hash it out and do my best to play.
Fraud.
And I felt like an imposter, like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't be here. This is crazy, right?
This is not for you.
Now, for all of you who are going through this, let me tell you one thing. Do not listen to that shit. All right? Do not listen to a society that tells you you are doing the wrong thing. You don't have this kind of a car. You don't have a house. You don't have you're not married. You don't have a wife. Couldn't even afford a wife. If you had a girlfriend, she's probably supporting you, right? All this kind of stuff. My God, when I remember the things that people told me, I just, you know, I have to stand like beside myself. Like, who would say that to somebody, right? I wouldn't, in a million years, I wouldn't think of somebody, you know, that was trying to be a doctor or whatever and failing in class or having a rough time. I would never say to them, hey man, being a doctor is not for you. Just give up. Go get a job at a, you know, car wash or something. For those of you who are going through that, do not listen to that shit. All right? But instead, double down on what you're doing. Double down. Now, do you have the guts to do that? Do you have the tenacity? Do you have the concentration level or the guts, the stomach to confront poverty in a society that looks down at you when you are poor, you're going through it, you're struggling, you're trying to make it happen? Do you have the guts to resist that? Do you have the guts to practice 8 hours a day when people are telling you you can't do it? You're not a real drummer. Drumming is not for you. Do you have the guts? If so, let me tell you something. Then you're a real drummer. No other measure counts. No other measure. No word from somebody else. No amount of putting you down and no amount of giving you positive feedback either. Because positive feedback, a lot of times, blah, 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 and people don't lift a finger to help you, right? The only person that's going to help you is you in the end, all right? Well, maybe you're lucky enough to have parents that build you a practice studio, or you have a practice studio. But do you have the tenacity to go in there in the morning and come out of there at night? All right? When everybody else is at their job making money, do you have the tenacity as an adult to stay in that room and work your butt off while everybody else is living their life out there? If you're lucky enough to have a practice studio, even if you have that, do you have the guts to go in there and sit there for 8 hours a day with the best information, with a proper lesson plan, with a proper practice schedule, the extreme discipline it takes to follow through for years, not for a little while, for years? If so, you're a real drummer. No other measure applies. Why can I say this? Because now I've come out on the other end. I'm on the other end of it. And as someone who has been through the mill, through the grinder, has been trodden down on the streets, put down, made to feel less of a man, let's say, because I choose to, live my life a certain way and not be a millionaire. When I look back at that, I just have to laugh, because now I'm on the other end of all of that. And I've talked to people. I've played all over the world, all right? I wouldn't say lucky. I've been consistent enough with my beliefs in myself that I eventually played all over the world, in China and Russia and South America, North America, tons of drum festivals, tons of concerts with great artists, okay? I'm on the other end now of all that. I've talked to people who are now millionaires, okay? I was talking to one lady who is admired in her community and blah, blah, blah. She's a real estate agent or something. She's in housing investments. And I talked to her at length because we had something to talk about. Anyway, she's telling me about her dreams, right? Her dreams, my dreams are to travel the world and be free and not have to do this anymore and do what I love to do and travel. And I was completely shocked because that's what I do. That's what I've been doing for over 2 decades. I may not have $1 million like her, or maybe she's worth 10 million. I think she's really rich. But she doesn't have the things that I have, okay? In terms of the dreams, that what she really wants. Now, this career is like the universal dream, all right? I once saw an article in a newspaper saying something like the universal dream of being a musician, then a drummer in this world, right? And then it had the article, and there were some drummers, and it was a big newspaper, something in LA Times, I don't remember exactly, but a big newspaper like that. I remember reading that and thinking, well, I don't know what the big deal is. I already do that. I mean, this was in my 20s. I read that article. It didn't hit me at all that this was the universal kind of dream, like, to be a musician, to be someone who goes after what they love, right? Strange, isn't it? I look at musicians now, and I like to think of it like, have you ever seen that movie, The Magnificent Seven? I think that's what real musicians are like now. The Magnificent Seven, okay? Loners that come together for a purpose, right? And they're like the gunslingers. They're hired because they're the best to do a job, and they're like independent. And it's kind of a strange analogy, but I'll do a video about that one day too. The Magnificent Seven is a movie that really struck me in that sense, because I felt like, man, these are like the last of the gunslingers, right? And that's kind of how it feels on this end of it now, right? The music industry has changed so much. When I was coming up, I was kind of at the tail end of all jingles and, tons of recordings and stuff like that. I caught some of that, but not like someone like Vinny or Steve Gadd or Ralph Humphrey. All those guys did a ton of that stuff. And I think any pro now will tell you that's all gone, okay? It's all something else. You can't listen to people okay? They don't know anything. Most people don't know anything about our careers. They don't even know how to, like, say, advise you on any career. Because they're not that. I mean, especially don't listen to people who are not what you're trying to be. Don't listen to somebody who is not a doctor or whatever telling you about medicine. You know, don't listen to a guy that plays video games all day when you're trying to study architecture, or the reverse, right? It's really hard because there comes a point where you start to believe this garbage, right? Where you start to feel like you're less of a human being, right? That is super dangerous because they don't know where you're going to end up. To be able to say to someone with a great passion that you should quit, or you're not a real drummer, or drumming is not for you, or this is not for you, man, get away from them right away. I don't care who it is, your mother, your father, your uncle, your best friend, whoever. Because you know what really is your closest ally and your friend is drumming. That is what's going to take you where you need to go. And it might be a lonely road on many instances, but don't you dare give up. Don't you dare stop playing, because that is the path to misery. And I can tell you 100% that I've seen that misery in other people's eyes who have quit, and they regret it. They regret it, boy. Man, they regret that. Okay? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm making it. I think this is a very special video. I'm making it for those out there, even if you're feeling inspired right now and you don't have any of these problems, I'm making it to make sure that you stay on the path. All right? I didn't have many people that were like this with me. I had maybe 2 or 3 mentors that really kept me on the path. But otherwise, it was block, 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 psychological abuse, block, block, even from other musicians. All right? Which is another dangerous thing. Okay. You need willpower. You need determination. You need to be strong. You can't be listening to people. You can't be listening to a society that puts these ideas in your head, okay? Because drumming is almost like a sacred quest. It's a sacred quest, and it's not about being famous. It's not about $1 million. It's about who you become. It's an inner journey. It's a journey with someone who's going to accompany you for the rest of your life. It's a thing that when you have it, nobody can touch. Only you. You can have people who understand, other drummers, other musicians, other artists, but your relationship with drumming is only for you. It's a sacred thing, okay? Don't forget. Don't ever forget, okay? All right, I hope this video finds you well and you're feeling fine and you're ready to practice and ready to play some drums. Peace.